Happy Sunday. How's everybody doing? Whew, I'm tired, man. Long, long month, long week. Let me check on my streams kicking in. So I'll see me. Let me welcome everybody. I think a lot of people went live this time today, but it's all good. So we'll get here started shortly. So it's checking me out. So I'll see me. Put down my phone. You know how we do it. If you got any questions, just throw them in the chat. Uh, nice little thumbnail I've been working on. Let's go and get it in. I think it's gonna be short today. I'm struggle streaming. So as people follow in, I usually just go over the videos I did this week as a little recap. So let's do that. I'm gonna get in and out pretty quick. What's up, Jerry? How you doing? Glad you could make it. Some of the off things videos I did, will stress and estate planning. My attorney came on and we just talk about, especially when you get my age, I'm 53. Make sure you're covering your assets and making sure you passing along generational wealth. So check the video out. She just kind of went over the basics between wills, trust, and estate planning. A lot of people lose wealth between generations, so just going to make sure that didn't happen. So once again, is and two is I talked about doing I call them society videos, bigger stuff. We probably talk about mass surveillance next from a legal and a technology standpoint. So we doing a few different things. I ain't happy. My laptop is kind of bad. I woke up and the display is blank, but the laptop's on. I've been there. My phone is like that, Jerry. I'm looking at my phone. I done cracked my screen. I need to go ahead. I got insurance, so I need to go and pay that $250 and get another phone. So I'm with you, Jerry. I'm having technology difficulties. Then I was doing this article right here, and we're just talking about billionaires in a recession. When I looked, most of the billionaires they talked about up here was technology billionaires. So I just did something quick talking about in the recession, the tech billionaires are killing it. They making more money than ever. When I looked up, it was Warren Buffett, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. A lot of y'all young guys, that's Steve Ballmer of Microsoft, Bill Gates' partner. He was operation. This guy, a lot of people don't know. That's Larry Ellison from Oracle. That's how I made my first bag. I started off as an Oracle DBA and an Oracle programmer. So then that's the finance guys. And the last two with the I covered their face with the text, of course, is Sergey Brin and my man from Google. Right. Without the laptop, I can't read. So that's on pause. Oh well, I feel you. The weird thing is when I teach, Jerry, even though I'm just probably stop teaching, is most kids do their homework on their phone, which I think is the weirdest thing. I never think about doing classwork on a phone. That's one of the weirdest things ever. So and this one was interesting, and we're going to jump into this today. Is Oracle Glue and AWS Glue and AWS Serverless, right? They were getting privilege escalation hacks, right? So just when I thought I was going to turn my infrastructure over to AWS, right, they were getting hugely hacked. So if you looked at the bottom part of that, it says attacker gets Glue resource. That Glue resource has a weak role. With that vulnerability in AWS Serverless, you can privilege escalate your admin role. Then with the admin role, you can give yourself any other service you want on AWS, right? So AWS, of course, patched it up, but got me a little worried about turning all my infrastructure over to AWS. What's up, Helmut? I was just on Black Heights too, listening to my young man. He was killing it, so shout out to him, Miguel, that was on Black Heights. So I was just over there too. Thanks for joining me. So we about to get into it, and But yeah, so I was a little concerned about AWS with their privilege escalation. Because too, that's not a new service for AWS either. So you would think they would have most of those services shaken out from vulnerability issues. So I was kind of a little pleasantly surprised that they were having those issues. But we know hackers are about, especially nation states and large hack groups are out there killing it. So we're going to talk about AWS serverless architecture, right? It's not. We're actually begin reading the CFR 410, but that's out the window now. It was good. I hope you get it fixed, Jerry. Depending on it might not be too bad to get it fixed. Screens are pretty cheap now. Crazy thing is, laptops are pretty cheap now, depending on what you need. So let's talk about the serverless architecture, Lambda. Um, so that's a horrible name. It's serverless because you don't control it, but Amazon controls it. So when we're gonna dig in it, when you call your business code or business function, Amazon spends a server underneath of it to run it, do what it needs to do the calls, do the calculation. Then once you're done, it takes that server underneath, right? Because you don't need it, you're not getting any hits, right? So instead of scaling out, it's still the same thing as you scaling out. It's just you don't control it. Amazon controls it. Right. So let's get in that technology. Once again, if you got any questions, throw them in the try. I'm still there listening to the classic. I feel you, Helmet. I be double dipping too. Thanks for the double support, Helmet. But yeah, he's and me and him going to get together, and I'm actually helping him on his startup a little bit, Helmet. So from a cybersecurity perspective, so it's a cool guy. So uh, I probably get a mention, and I ain't gonna get to hear him. I told him I was gonna give him I love you, right? Because he's out there grinding. So I told him once he gets started and he gets bigger, he gonna have to pay me my regular rate, Helmet. But I told him I'm gonna give you I love you rate because he's young and he's grinding. I really appreciate that. So I told him I help him from a cybersecurity standpoint. So shout out to him. AWS offers technology for running code, managing data, integrating applications, all without managing servers, right? So that's the big part. Oh, that's cool, man. Thanks for that. I'm glad. I'm glad for that update. Yes, we had a great conversation, and like I said, we're gonna do some business. So I told him I'll be his virtual CISO basically in the end, and that's what I'm gonna start offering into the to YouTube, to the manosphere, especially young guys grinding and young people, but young guys grinding. If they got our app or something they're rolling with, I'll definitely give them I love you, right? Because I'm blessed. I done did it. I had two failed companies, so I've been out there for real. So once again, managing data, integrating applications all without managing servers. Serverless technologies features with automatic scaling, built-in high availability, pay-for-use billing models to increase agility and optimize costs. These technologies also eliminate infrastructure management tasks like capacity provisioning, patching, so you can focus on writing code that serves your customers, right? But when you give up those servers, imagine that, right? You give up some security in that stuff, right? So that's a negative part. Serverless applications start with AWS Lambda, an event-driven and compute service natively integrated with over 200 AWS services, software as a service, SaaS applications, right? So for me, the question is, like my man was talking about, from a cybersecurity perspective, and also from a federal compliance perspective, can we do a fully serverless architecture and that pass government inspection to work, right? Like we call it ATO, authority to operate. Could I do a serverless architecture and have that work for a government application, right? And two is, even though I do a lot of commercial work, I like to put them at federal security level, right? So you can be more secure. You have the paperwork, and there's a lot of things you can get work with that, right? So that's how I actually make my living in real life. So once again, managing data and integrating applications, all without managing servers, right? So that's the goal of AWS Serverless Architecture, right? So AWS Lambda is a serverless compute service that runs your code in response to an event and automatically manages the underlying compute resource for you, right? So that compute resource, once again, is servers. Uh, how do you manage that, right? Well, how do you get AWS to manage it? The event may include changes in the state and update, such as a user placing an item in a shopping cart on an e-commerce site. You can use the Lambda to extend your other AWS service with the custom logic or create your own backend service that operates at AWS scale, performance, and security. Right. So from a website, when you click that button, right, and you run that piece of code, that's the event that's going to get the AWS service to come up underneath that, right? That AWS controls, right? That runs your code. These events may include update, user placing, like we said, shopping cart on an e-commerce site. You can use AWS to extend other resource, custom logic to create your own backend service that operates at AWS scale, performance, and security. AWS Lambda automatically runs code in response to multiple events, such as a HTTP request via Amazon API Gateway, modifications to object in a simple storage S3 bucket, table updates in Amazon Dynamo DB, and state transactions in AWS step functions. Right. So once again, when you do this, the compute, which is an EC2 resource, a lot of times that spins up a server and runs your code, right? You're not responsible for that. AWS is, right? So that's why it's serverless, because you're not responsible for it. The runs code in high availability compute infrastructure, performs all the administration of your compute resource. This includes maintenance capacity, provisioning, automatic scaling, code and security patch deployment, and code monitoring logging. All you need to do is supply the code, right? So that's what you pay SAs to do and DBAs to do, right? Security patches, automatically scaling, monitoring, logging, right? So you don't need as many DBAs and SAs, right? Because if you do serverless, AWS is going to manage that for you, right? So let's look at a lot of the services that falls under this infrastructure that you can call for in AWS, right? So, but yeah, Helmut, I think from I think his company's gonna do well. Like I said, he's up and coming. Um, like I said, I came here to help people, Helmut. So, and anybody, I thought that's offered to anybody, right? If you have a startup or you get stuck at work and you want to chop up some with me or need my services, just reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to. And the two is, I consider myself an extension of Black Heights, right? If Black Heights need me to help somebody, right, he's gonna send them my way, and I'm gonna help them. Same thing to Kev Tech, Keep It Techie. A lot of guys on the space that just help me out. So when they send me guys, I'm gonna really make sure they're good, because those guys have really helped me. So let's go through some of the serverless architecture. AWS Lambda, that's the one we usually talk about. Event-driven, pay-as-you-go compute service that lets you run code without provisioning or managing servers, right? Once again, that's the key component to there. That's what we're trying to get out of, right? So when you talk about certain less jobs that's going to happen, I think in the future, right, is SAs and DBAs, because people are going to run more serverless stuff, right? But you're going to need more programmers and high-level guys to do other tasks. Just some of those mundane tasks, as in you won't need to pay those guys to do that service. AWS Fargate is a service compute engine that works on Elastic Container, aka Docker, and the other one's Kubernetes, right? ECS and EKS, right? Those are the two most prominent containers, right? Everybody wants to be containers. I'm trying to be like you. Why are you trying to be like me? Shout out to Engineering Cannabis, multi-talented, especially in the manosphere AI. artificial intelligence, machine learning. Yeah, I was on Black Heights. I saw you over there too. Engineering cannabis, but I'm trying to be like you, man. I got to get my machine learning skills up. So from a serverless standpoint of architecture, we got the Lambda and the Fargate. Amazon Event Bridge is a serverless event bus that lets you build event-driven application that scales across AWS and existing systems, right? So the same thing as with the Lambda. The bus, those is you usually put it in a queue or a bridge, right? Then it automatically flows to other stuff. Like the next thing is AWS step functions. AWS step function is a visual workflow orchestrator that makes it easy to sequence multiple AWS services in a business critical application, right? So a lot of times too, it's not one event. You need a multiple event, and you're gonna branch that on a or on an and or function, right? I need these two things to happen before I call this other Lambda, right? Or I need AP or accounts receivable. Then I need to pay it or go take it out their bank accounts, right? So those multiple steps in there. And two is like we talked about, Amazon Simple Query Service is a message queue enabling you to decouple and scale microservices, distributed systems, and serverless application. So I think Amazon really just wants to handle the management of those compute resources, VMs, Windows, virtual machine, Linux boxes. They want to take all the infrastructure out of you, and you really just focus on code or machine learning, like engineering cannabis. So that's a lot of other functions you can work on besides doing those mundane tasks of Linux, Windows, and even databases, right? Web server, app servers, right? Some of that is mundane. I used to do that for a living. Patch, spin up, test, right? Amazon's got all that in their pipeline, so they can do that underneath without you knowing it, right? And two, you scaling up, so I can just scale up another VM, test it with the new patch and network, just tear down my older versions, just spin up everything on my new ones. Like I went from patchy 9 to 10, right? They call it A/B testing, right? Then my B is my new higher version. Once I know that's good, I can stop testing my A and spin everything up to B, right? Those are some of the new things I think with serverless, smaller companies didn't have to worry about or do, but now it's going to be. Wealth Talk, salute. Engineering, I salute him. Salute, but yeah, like I said, I really enjoy. I really like Miguel. I think he's gonna do big things. I actually put Generation Next in Black Heights chat, so I think he's doing great things. Amazon SNS, Amazon Simple Notifications, a fully message service for both application to application and application to person. Right, a lot of times that's really email. Right, you send an event. Across a lot of times you see an email and you can take action on that email, and inside that email you can strip out certain things, right, and take action on what's in the email. Amazon API Gateway is a fully managed service that makes it easy to create and publish APIs at any general. A lot of times when you make a database call or web service call, you run up to the API, because at the end they call it URI. So in there to say like rows or role or add row, delete row. Then with that URI going through the gateway, it has some, like we're talking about, event at the end of it that needs to happen. And the cool thing is when I do the gateway, once again, when it sees that event, it spins up the VM underneath Windows or Linux. Then it runs your code. Then you take action. What good on your end? Oh. Let's see. Let me highlight some of those. Oh. Let's see. So AWS App Sync is a fully managed service that accelerates application development with the scalable GraphQL API. So GraphQL is basically running through a hierarchy architecture. And part of that is we always go, the president has directors, right? President has multiple direct reports. Those direct reports have multiple divisions. Those divisions has multiple supervisors. those supervisors have multiple employees, right? So then when I click on employee, right, the graph part of that is that employee's supervisor, that supervisor to his supervisor, director to manager to president, right? It shows you that whole graph and rolls through it, right? That's a special kind of database or select statement you would need or query it if you were a data scientist, right? That graph is a little tricky. So of course, Amazon has a service for you. Salute, Wally. How you doing? I was there too and kind of figured his insurance niche was using ML for assessing insurance as an automatic platform that accepts insurance with critical information. No, that's true. Wealth Top Production, that's my channel. Okay. Okay, everybody go check out Wealth Top Production. Go subscribe to that. My man's always here support me, so check that out. I think I've been on that channel. So yeah, check that out. Everybody subscribe to him. Did his Amazon fix it, or is that a trend? I mean, that big one on the block will be hit hard. They fixed it pretty quick. Two is I think a lot of times those cyber companies, because both of those were cyber research companies, they usually tell them before they let the whole world know. That's kind of agreement. I'm sure Amazon cut them a pretty big check for that, as far as their bounty program. So I guess I was just surprised that you can still do that because Glue is an old service. So that Glue is not a super new service. So I would think something that big. I mean, that's from my point, that's a category one red alert. We could just escalate your privilege and take over the whole region, the whole zone of that, right? Um, so here are a couple more serverless architecture. Once again, I think Amazon's gonna make all their stuff serverless architecture in the future. And so Amazon S3 is an object storage service designed to store and protect any data. So a lot of people use S3 buckets to save everything from backups to export files to a lot of stuff on S3. So when you put it on there, it automatically spin up the compute a EC2 underneath, right, to store it and do it. So Amazon Dynamo DB is a key value document database delivering single-digit millisecond performance at any time. And Amazon RDX Proxy is a managed database service for relational database that makes application more easily scalable. And my favorite one is Amazon Aurora Serverless is MySQL and Postgres compatible relational database that automatically scales capacity based on your application need, right? So I'm usually an ORDS guy, and I'll probably use Postgres because I might need to write a package in real time. I don't know people like to write database code anymore. That's obsolete, but I still love to do it. So let's look at some more of these. Let's see. Professor gets nervous and I'm going to learn the cloud, and then AWS going artificial to make it more cost effective. Your thought? No, I think no, because like we talked about, compute is sysadmin, DBAs. You just got, like you said, keep going. If you do, what part are you focusing on? I guess are you going to be DevOps, SecOps, security, programming? So I guess it depends on which part of that. And two is there's always going to be work because still you got to write the initial one, and you can make duplicating and spinning up stuff is a lot more easier. But you just got to make sure you're on the right side of the artificial intelligence because there's a certain part of security, right? You can do the attacks, but you got to do the initial part to figure out how to block the attack, right? You got to help the engineering cannabis in there. You got to feed that logic into the machine learning so it understands what it needs to attack and how to block it, right? And you got to validate that it's right. So Metropolis, because I'm learning AWS right now. I'm about to sit for the practitioner test. Then two is I'm really gonna go hard on the security in AWS because two is compliance and making sure that's right and mitigating control. So you just got to pick the right path of that Metropolis, and I think you'll be fine on that. And we're going to talk more about that on this channel. And there's multiple paths too. There's not one path. Let's make that particularly clear, right? Give me time. I hella rusty with my early live streaming. I've been doing this for a while and I'm still rusty, Wally. So shout out. I be struggle streaming. I see people like TLA and Black Heights and Alpha Cyber, some little guys, man. They be smooth and I just be struggling some days, Wally. But I'm just Wally. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get out there and everybody sub to Wally. I'm gonna have to check to see if I'm sub. I think I've been hit usually a prep test. Facts. What's up, Ty? Glad you could make it. What do you think about learning Go in 2020 going forward? No, I think Go is a good language. I think Go, Rust is the new language. Like I'm brushing up on my Java. Hell, that's like Java's damn near like COBOL. So no, I think Rust and Go's in the future. Python's gonna be in there because you can. So I think Go's a good language. Go or Rust is gonna be on one of the base languages right on the chip soon. I need to look that up. But no, I think Go is a good language, Helman. Ooh. Princess A's in the house. Glad you could join me. Metropolis networking. How? Oh, that's good because Amazon gives you the networking components. They don't tell you how to network because depending on what level of compliance you're going to do, Metropolis depends on how you're going to do your network. We're going to touch a little bit on networking today, to be honest. Now, networking is good. Like I said, and two is do AWS networking. Then look at Cisco has networking on top of AWS to do a lot more security. I'm going to touch on that in the future. So, no, I think networking. Look at AWS networking and look at the Cisco part of in AWS marketing because it sits on top of AWS and it gives you a lot more features you can use with it. I'm doing short videos from again before the cleanup information I gave. Shout out to that. No worries. We need that. I'm working on that power. I'm working on that, man. That's my this summer, right? I said the first year was me talking those shell. This year is me getting the labs ready. I'm actually gonna set up a learning management like you're in school, so you can actually take labs and quizzes and tests. So that is coming, Power. Coming. I've only been doing this for a year. Give me a little time, Power, but that is definitely coming. That's definitely coming. Once you get good at auditioning something, then we next whack-a-mole appear. Oh, facts. But that means we'll have jobs. You got to stay vigilant, especially in the cybersecurity realm. So now that keeps us employed. I bet you done better than me. I haven't taken a chat, so let's get back to these slides. So talking to my man, so this is the standard 3-tier networking, right? We talking about networking in the chat. So you come in, internet gateway at the top, right? We open it up to the internet. The public gateway is where the internet application load balancer. That private net right there, FEASG for me would be where you put the web servers, right? So you come in on the internet, the application load balancer is going to send you to the proper web server, right? Then that web server is going to send you to the proper app server. Then that app server is going to insert, delete, or put your documents into a database at the bottom, right? So I'm old school, so I got my Apache at here at the web server, right? I put my static and my JSPs, my web server, down here in my application server, right? They're gonna call my Java code. I'm gonna have my Java code in there. Then once you hit my Java code, it's gonna insert update into my database, comes back, right? And I can do pagination, showed you what you ordered, calculate what you paid on a credit card, right? So that's the standard 3-tier architecture right there, right? Web server, application server, database. But you remember in this setup, we're controlling the Linux, we're controlling the Windows. We're responsible for that. In the serverless, right? Amazon's going to be responsible for that, right? So that's the difference, right? Between on-prem or off-prem, or even if you're in the cloud, right? Are you running Amazon Linux or Red Hat Linux, or you letting Amazon do that? Who's controlling that? Who's patching that? Who's responsible for that, right? We always talk about our shared responsibility. Who's responsible for that? Who owns that? Right. So we're going to dig down. This is more of the serverless architecture, right? Meaning there's no Linux, uh, Windows, or any of that in this setup. So at the top, you see it says presentation layer. I need to make that a little bigger. Presentation layer, right? And then up there you have your Amazon S3. Your Cognito is going to handle your authentication and authorization. CloudFronts, you're going to be your static web server pages. So when they come in, then they want to log in, right? It's going to be your S3, then you're going to lose AWS Cognito. And there it shows you your logic tier. Your Lambda is going to be where your Java code, C# or Python is, right? So when you click on that static web page and you say, I need to log in, or I need to query to see what I bought last week, right? You got to run some code. That's going to be the Lambda function. Remember, that's your Java, C# or Python code. Then when you click on that, it says, okay, run that logic for that code, right? And that logic points to what? AWS Aurora, which is a database, or the Amazon Dynamo DB, which is a database, or Amazon Redshift, which is a data warehouse, right? Each one of those are places to store your database in or take activity, right? Even Amazon Ethna, right? You can just have a JSON object out there on a disk, or you can read that JSON flat object like it is a database. Right, and once you get it back, right, you can get it, send it back to the user up there through the WAF, and display them what they need, display them their order, display them their calculation. But none of these tiers has a Linux or Windows box that you control, right? When you click that function, the server spins up underneath, does the calculation, and put it back. You're not responsible for any of that code. Is HTML? Oh yeah, yep. You need that in Acropolis, because that is the presentation. That'd be at the top tier, right? Because when I send that data back, right, I'm just sending it raw, right? I need my presentation peer or my front end people or my UI people got to make it beautiful, right? Professor Black, I suck at that right now. So yeah, you still need that. So when that data comes back from your Lambda, right, it's going to be in a JSP page or HTML page. That CSS still needs to make it. I call it pretty, beautiful, right? You still need that. So yeah, you still need that that HTML presentation, because AWS doesn't help you with any of that. When I send the raw data, right, you got to format it and put it in the format you want, which will be HTML or CSS. And those pages will sit in the static CloudFront right there. I'm sorry, yeah, CloudFront there if it's static, or the S3 bucket would have those in there. So, and shout out to that. I could do CSS, but I suck at it. I worked on stuff for a month. I gave it to actually a front end person. They put some rounded buttons on it and had it shaded and put it in the A-frame. It looked beautiful. I don't have an artistic eye. I can do it technically I can do it, but it all looks like crap because I'm half colorblind. I don't have those type of especially visionary skills for stylistic stuff like that in Metropolis. So like my man said, Hellman, those foundations are gold. So let's go out through that. The N-tier architecture is well known. We were talking about the 3-tier that organize applications into a number of logical tiers. In theory, N can be in any arbitrary number, but 3 tends to be the most common. Yeah, I've been doing 3 tiers for 20 years. Architecture application organized into a presentation tier, which implements application component dealing with the user interface. That's what we're talking about there, Metropolis. You got to get that presentation tier, which implements application components that deals with the user interface. The logic tier is sometimes referred as the application tier, where business logic are implemented. and the data tier where the data associated with the application is stored and managed, right? So that presentation tier, that's where that CSS, HTML, React. I mean, there's a lot of things. Angular. There's a lot of JavaScript front end components. Like I do Angular because it does a lot of work for me, and I suck at it, right? But so from a simple presentation tier, right? Presentation, logic, data, right? Same thing. Been that way forever. So my man jumped the gun. No, I'm just joking. The trap. Front end application is all static contents, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and image, which are generated by React utilities like Create, React App. Amazon CodeFront hosts all these objects. The web applications, when used, downloads all the resources to the browser and start to run from there. The web application connects to the backend calling the application. So that's what we were talking about right there in the Metropolis. You got to get the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and all your cool images in that standard front end part, right? Logic. We was talking about the logic tiers built using Lambda function, front ended by API gateway RESTful API. The architecture shows multiple exposed services. There are multiple different Lambda functions, each handling a different aspect of the application. The Lambda functions are behind API gateways and accessible using API URL paths. We'll see that coming up. The user authenticator is handled using Amazon Cognito, using pools or federated user providers. The API gateway uses out-of-box integrations with Amazon Cognito. Only after user is authenticated, the client will receive a JSON web token, which should then use when making an API call. Each Lambda function is assigned its own IAM role to provide access to the appropriate data sources, right? So now we're getting into architecture, right? Where's our stuff? What permissions? How do we get in the app? How does, when a person logs in, we give them the token that says, these are the permissions, these are the services it can use, right? Data tier is my field from data analytics, IR facts. That's where I make my living at too. Engineering cannabis. That's where the Java's at. That's where I do my calculations at. Facts, dollars, tiers. How good in the Metropolis. But like he said is, and I suck at it, and I think engineering cannabis said that presentation tier is a different animal, right? Even though I feel like I do all the work, I do all the calculations, and I give the data to the presentation tier. That's the thing I learned from Steve Jobs, and it took me a long time to figure that out. And I'm a little jealous, actually. If the presentation tier looks sloppy, people will think the code in the application is sloppy. I've seen people with beautiful presentation, and the calculations was wrong, but they still like the app because it was beautiful, right? It was, especially when it's beautiful and clean and simple. That's where Apple kills everybody, right? Their UI and their services are clean, simple, and crisp, right? I did an application one time. I did just some basically HTML, so because it was for an internal application. They said my application looked crappy. I'm like, dude, this is for internal use only. But my calculations were right. My backend was smooth. I thought my database design was killing it. Nobody cared because everybody loved the beauty of the front end, right? And I learned that from Steve Jobs, man. If your front end ain't good, people think your application is crappy. And even though if the front is good and the application is crappy, a lot of times they get mesmerized by the front end piece of it. So data, in this particular example, DynamoDB is used for the data storage by other purposes built. Amazon databases, storage services can be used depending on the use case and use scenario, right? You can use Amazon RDS, DynamoDB, Redshift. I think I did a stream with it where they had so many databases at their disposal on AWS, whatever you need, Graph, so whatever you need, they got. I'm an old school relational guy, so I'm gonna use Aurora, probably Postgres, right? It's proved mathematically. I'm an ORDS guy, but there's a lot of features to it, right? So let's go through that. Good afternoon. Shout out to NC Worker. Metropolis is YouTube. Let's see. Accept your strengths and assign your weakness to other presentations for other people. I do facts. The older I get, engineering cannabis, you 100%. I stay out of that presentation tier, man. I'm gonna give you some basic HTML forms you can use. Put all the CSS you want on it. Any React, Angular. Here's the format. Make it look beautiful. I agree 100% with you. As I was younger, I used to fight that engineering cannabis, but I figured out I suck at presentation. Bells and whistles. Oh, 100%, Gray. But people get mesmerized with those bells and whistles. Sometimes the bells and whistles mesmerize them so much, they don't know the program's not calculating right. I've seen that live in person. So you got to, those two have to go hand in hand, right? Oh, it's so beautiful. But I'm like, the calculation's wrong. Right? So the calculation's wrong, right? Let's talk about the architecture once again. Thousands of servers can be used in a monolith architecture to increase the performance of an application. This serverless multi-tier architecture pattern eliminates server management, right? So once again, I'm cool with that, but when I give up server management, security goes along with that, right? Because I don't have control of that server. That server is being managed by AWS, right? 95% of the time, I feel good with that. I think they got 1,000 security people, and most people suck at security. So most times, I don't really worry about when I turn that over. So let's see some of the benefits once again. Several of the benefits used: no operating systems to choose, patched or managed. And we struggle with patching. Everybody struggle with patching. So if you can turn that over to AWS, that might be a good thing. No service to monitor, scale out, or secure. No risk to infrastructure costs by over provisioning. No risk for application performance by under provisioning, right? Because you can scale up or scale down with the use. Amazon's got you for that, right? They're going to handle that for you. So I think I'm getting comfortable with turning that over to Amazon. And we just seen the diagram of that. We just flesh it out with some more components that are in the standard 3-tier architecture. So let me read the rest of these in the chat. The same life, most folks take things at first value. Facts. Only to realize they're facts, but that's where it is. So usually let's talk about the standard 3-tier. And we still doing the standard 3-tier. We're just going to talk about doing it more in a serverless, right? We've been breaking it down in a serverless architecture. Presentation tiers, some of the services in there are Amazon CloudFront, Amazon S3, Amazon Cognito, Amazon QuickSight. In the logic tier, Amazon API Gateway, Amazon Lambda, Glue, and CloudWatch, right? In the data tiers, Aurora, Dynamo DB, Redshift, and Amazon Athena. The cool and bad thing about Amazon is, man, they got so many services. They got a service for you, but you got to make sure you understand the services and it's the right service for the job, right? So that's part of the of that, right? And that's why I just said I'm gonna study with the practitioner. I'm gonna get in there and kind of figure out what's going on, and just keep grinding and learning, right? So let's see what JM's got coming. He's got a question. Does AWS offer vulnerability management tools to take care? Oh yeah, they got a tool. I think it's Inspector, AWS Inspector, but I need to double check that. And they do take care of patching for you, right? They usually tell you what they come out with a new version of that VM. Then you can test it in your development environment, right? Then you say spin it up. Then once you test it, you just put your code in there, spin the other ones down, then spin a couple of them up, right, with scaling. So now they'll take care of that patching for you. I actually had an app running on AWS and I forgot to patch it. They sent me a nice email saying, you got 2 weeks to patch. If you don't patch it, we gonna patch it, right? Because they want to make sure they're not opening up their whole infrastructure because somebody's being sloppy. That's one reason I really like AWS, right? Professor, do you use LDAP for patching and updates? LDAP, lightweight directory. I always use that for. I don't. LDAP to me is light directory. I usually use that for authentication and authorization. Are you telling me to log in before I patch Metropolis? Um, Let me expand on that. For me, I usually use that to authenticate. So we usually have a patch server. From the Windows side, we usually use SCCM. Right, they got their own authentication built in from the Windows side from Active Directory. And for our Linux stuff, we're actually synced to Active Directory for that particular pass. So from a Linux patching, they use Puppet, and I think they use Active Directory to authenticate and authorization to figure out what servers it can go patch at what time and at what level, right? Because usually we have the standard patching, we have dev, uh, quality assurance, then we call it model office. It looks like exactly like production. So we patch each one of those levels, right? And once all of those pass, then we do production, right? Because we do big system. Um, one of my clients has a $70 million system. So if we break it, we gonna get in trouble in Metropolis. So we want to make sure we test all our patching at every level, so we won't get called into the big boss's office. So expand on that if that didn't answer your question, Metropolis. Shout out to Miss Nash coming in. Make me look at this and stay the same. We gotta all grow into it. Well, this not even though I've been doing this for 30 years, I still gotta learn the same services from AWS like everybody else. The cool thing is I can usually match it with something I already done, but we trying to get that wealth, man, so we can talk about it. Active Directory for patch. Yeah, because we want to make sure that the service is running, is logged in, and can get in. We use the Active Directory because even though it's a service, we got to authenticate the service to make sure no nation states taking taking advantage of it, right? So that service logs in like it's a person. And a lot of times we actually have it call a person that's in charge of the patching to make sure there's no rogue nation that's going to do us like Solar Winds, right? Solar Winds, remember, somebody took over their coding pipeline. So as we patched, we want to make sure a person is overseeing that. So when that service logs in, it actually calls a person that says, I validate that this patching service can run Metropolis. So we don't we don't want any rogue services out here. So we don't want to end up on TV. You good, Metropolis. So yeah, that's how Active Directory. It's more as an authentication to make sure it's not a rogue service. Because even though it is a system service, we want every system service assigned to a person in our organization, so we know it's supposed to be running what it should be running. So that's why we do it like that in Metropolis. Because when I first heard that, I was like, that don't make sense. Then once everybody start getting hacked from nation states, I go, oh yeah, we want to make sure we know that server's running and who's responsible for it. So once again, we just talked about this from a serverless standpoint. You got the presentation tier, logic tier, or app tier to the left, database tier, right? And we're going to kind of start pulling that apart from a serverless architectural standpoint. Once again, thanks for joining me. I appreciate everybody here. I just made the 4,000 watch hours. So I woke up to morning and I had 4,004 watch hours. So I just put in the application to get monetized. I want to thank everybody here, especially, Metropolis, Helmet, Engineering, Adrian, Cannabis. There's a lot of people here, and that's going to listen to be my day ones that, I kind of grew up, Gray Fox, that watch me struggle stream now. I'm a little better than struggle streaming, but I'm still struggling. So I want to thank everybody for helping me get to those watch hours, and hopefully I get approved to get a little of that ad money so I can have me another steak, even though I'm messing my diet up. I want to thank everybody for that. So let's see. Let's read to these questions. Sound like some insurance needs CYA. Don't break it. Yeah, you got to be careful, and that's what testing is about. And like I said, I used to work at the Department of DoD. We have 400 programmers. We used to do integration tests with 100 people. It would be crazy. So, until it wasn't automated like it is here. So, yeah, you do need some CYA. You do need people to sign off on it. You do need to run, have most of your stuff on automated tests. So when you click a button, you can run everything your application is supposed to run in tests. So when you patch, you can make sure that patch doesn't break anything, right? And two is we can roll that new source of code to a small subset of our users so they can test it and flush it out to make sure we didn't break anything. If you ever look at Facebook and look at their code development, they can run certain new features to certain countries. Before it comes to the United States, they got them running in Rio or somewhere small to test it out. Then if it works, they can roll it to the rest of the world. People don't realize Facebook has 47,000 servers around the world. So when they do a test, when it rolls out, it's got to roll out. So I don't. So those big tech firms like that, they do huge test scenarios. Oh, facts on that. Don't try to memorize everything. As you use it, it'll start getting into your memory. Oh, yeah. Shout out to Hellman. He's giving out gems. We always say you eat the elephant in small parts. It's an elephant. Don't be scared of elephant. You got to eat it. You just got to eat it in small parts. So he's giving out gems right there. As I got when I was younger, you get overwhelmed with big things. Now I just been doing this so long. Okay, I'm learning AWS. Let's start with the networking because everything sits on the networking. Okay, I got the networking. How do people log in? Authorization, right? Subnets. How we gonna move the directory around? Subnets to web service app service to database, right? So I know the components I need to eat to figure out the architecture. Even though it's new, I've been doing it for so long for on-prem and on mainframe and on client server, right? So what's the difference when you roll it up in the cloud? Now we're saying we're not controlling the servers. What's the difference? So let's walk through this. So remember, it used to be 3-tier. The web tier used to be up there, right, where we're spinning up servers. This architecture, we took the web servers out, right? And now the Lambda API gateway is controlling the presentation servers at the top, right? Amazon controls that now. We trust it. So now we went from a 3-tier to a 2-tier, right? But we still secure because the Lambda, and we're going to talk about that, the security of Lambda and the API gateway is going to handle that for our shared responsibility, right? We got that, and Amazon's going to take care of the VM or the Windows that spin up underneath, right? So that's the so we're flattening out our servers, we're saving money, we're giving more control over to AWS. Each one teach one. Facts. I'm working on my CH cert for econ. Is that cert recognized by DoD for contract? I got to do a little research on that, JM. I would think so. The problem is DoD. I don't think has ethical hacking jobs or hackers on site for FTE. And like I said, I haven't been there in 15 years. When I was there, we always outsourced red team hacking because if you do NIST and compliance, we actually had to do every 3 years. We actually have to have a red team come on site and test our app. We didn't have those dudes on any of our teams when I was at DoD. You had more blue team hardening than part of that, and I was part of that. We do light red team, but we didn't have official ethical hackers on staff. Now, probably if you would work for a company and they would work for DoD, they probably would make you have to have that cert. I'll double check that, JM. Put that in the. Okay, I'll go back and look at the chat and look that up. That's the only thing, JM. We don't. When I was there, they didn't have those people on staff. We always outsourced that. That's true for engineering councils. Everybody's doing AB. I'm not gonna say everybody. I got a lot of mid-sized kinds who struggle to get the AB tested. But yeah, that's the that's the method everybody should be doing is 100% A/B testing. I bet you a lot of people don't know what A/B testing is, engineering cannabis, but you're 100%, especially with statistical methods and machine learning. And there two is we want you to have your whole code base covered with electronic tests that you can run. Then, like engineering cannabis say, statistically and machine learning, we can learn from that, right? Especially with fuzz testing and denial of service testing. We could put all that in your automated test group to test your app to see how secure it is, right? One bite at a time. There it is. Facts, first steps. So once again, up here, remember it's 3-tier. We took the web tier out. We I'm not gonna say giving it over to Amazon, but Amazon's gonna take care of the infrastructure for us. We're gonna put Lambda on and just get our functions, get our CSS, put our static files out there, and then AWS will handle the rest, right? Then the next step of that too is right the application tier, right? We're gonna take the application tier. Now we got really one tier. The Lambda in the middle, right, is gonna be the logic tier, right? Up here is gonna be your CSS, your HTML, your React, your Angular. There, and then we took the middle tier out. We're just gonna put a Lambda function in. It's gonna handle all that application logic for you, right? It's probably gonna be 20 or 40 of those because the Lambda just runs that piece for your URL call, your web service call, your HTTPS, right? Everybody's doing microservice. You send a microservice call through there, right? Then the only thing we have left, right, is the database tier, right? VPC, locking it down, right? So we went from 3-tier to 1-tier, right? So those tiers are still here. Just the Lambda and the Lambda up there is taking care of those other 2 tiers for you, right? So that's what we're doing. That's what we're moving, right? So here is kind of super flat tier, right? One big VPC, right, from a wireless tier. If you Google this is actually in the Lambda documentation, right? You come in, you got your cloud front, which is your static documentation. Route 53 is your DNS, AWS certificate, right? You want to have a HTTPS certificate, right? TLS, right? That's gonna have your certificate in there. You come in, we talked about those API gateways, right? Comes in, it's gonna cause your Lambda, right? That's gonna be your app tier right there. You're gonna get it, and in the back, Dynamo DB, any other database could be back there, right? So that's it all for one VPC, right? And we're going to talk about this from a security perspective. I don't know if I want it all in one VPC like that, right? I like it tiers, so you actually have to attack and hack through those tiers to get to the other place. But this is one. Then Amazon Cognito, right? Verify the token, identify the individual. That's what we're using when you log in, right? We're gonna, like my man said, we got to start doing labs. I'm getting my labs ready so we can actually do this in real time and in real place. So that's how you really learn by labbing, right? I'm a tactical guy. I like to touch stuff and see it break and figure out how to fix it, right? But at the end, this is all those 3 tiers smashed up into one serverless architecture, right? So now what I got to do, and I've been figured out, is could I spin this up at DoD? Could I spin up this at the IRS, and would they accept this for a federal system doing federal work, right? So that's the last thing I need to figure out. I think so, but I need to actually reach out to a few people, right? This is what we talk about here all the time, right? Shared responsibility, right? Usually it would be more half and half, but this, right? The customer really responsible for little stuff, right? Because Amazon now is taking over all the SA work, the DBA work, the patching of those box, the handling of those box, right? So what we're responsible is a lot less, right? So the question is, do we really are we okay with AWS being responsible for that, right? And is the federal government in your app, right? It's called ATO, Authority to Operate. Would they be okay with AWS being responsible for all that, right? So that's but really that's what you want to get to, right? You really, from a business standpoint, all the stuff in the orange is really not going to help your business, right? Your stuff up here is your proprietary calculations, your proprietary business functions, right? Your secret sauce, right? Now that has to do with patching VMs, patching Linux, patching Windows, right? All that's ancillary stuff that really doesn't help your business, right? So there's my man in the house, Citizen Lou. Citizen Lou's a great programmer, right? Citizen Lou doesn't care about Windows platforms, VM platforms. He just want to put his code out there and it works, right? He wants Amazon to take care of the patching of the Windows, the patching of the Linux, the patching of Active Directory, right? All that's infrastructure, right? As a programmer, right? And I love programming. I don't want to be responsible for that, right? If Amazon's going to take care of that for me, right? So my responsibility now is just in the blue. Really, it's just code and business logic, right? And that's really what your customers care about, right? How they make money with proprietary code. They don't want to do all the other stuff. 30 days to income calendar freedom. Oh, that's cool. Like I said, I've given up on the front end. Like shout out to Engineering Cannabis. I focus on after you hit the button. So I'm just not good at colors and A-frames and CSS and all that stuff. So don't be teasing me, Adrian. Help me check thing. So what DoD spin up? Lots and lots of paperwork before you can spin up. Probably new services, new tech has to be facts on that. So I'm reaching out because there's a lot of hardening DoD wants you to do engineering cannabis, and a lot of the cool thing is a lot of stuff AWS because they used to government work. They want that 10 billion Jedi money. A lot of services they already sent off to the government to have them review it. FedRAMP, STIG, CIS, or government hardening benchmarks. A lot of those services they spin up, they pre-send them. They pre-send them to the government to get the government to approve off. So as a government agency, you can say I could come up in Amazon and I could do this work, and the government's okay with it because Amazon makes a shitload of money from DoD and the government, Treasury, all that, right? They about that federal life, man. And so these are quick things when I looked up from a federal standpoint, what we kind of talking about. Shout out to Boyles for joining us. From a federal FIPS 140-2 basically means the government's looked at your encryption and said it was okay. A lot of people say they AES 256 or they're Diffie-Hellman or DAS3, but if you don't open up the code and look at it, how do you know? You're just guessing, right? So Amazon RDS Data API now supports FIPS 140-2 validated endpoints, meaning they send it to the government and government sign off on it. Once again, RDS data now offers a federal information processing standard validation endpoints for United States and Canada government standard that specifies security requirement for cryptographic modules that protect sensitive information. FIPS 140-2 validated endpoints for data APIs are available for both the CLI and API calls. When you do stuff for command line, government already approved it. RDS data API provides HTTPS API endpoints for your applications to issue SQL commands to your Aurora serverless V1 database and minimize overhead. So once again, the government approved you doing that. So they're trying to get that facts, racks on racks. You're right, help me. Racks on racks. Lambda Compliance, we were looking at the shared responsibility model. You're responsible for determining which compliance regimen applies to your data. After you determine your compliance regimen needs, you can use various Lambda features to match those controls or contact an AWS expert, such as a solution architect, domain expert, or technical account manager. However, AWS cannot advise customers on which compliance regimens are applicable for your particular use case. So once again, you're responsible for that, right? If I'm going to use this particular serverless component, this serverless feature, right, you're responsible for making sure when the government comes in and review it, it's you. Amazon's going to be like, we gave them the components. It's up to them to pick the right component to use that's been approved for that particular part, right? Then anytime we with the government, you got to monitor your stuff. We need the logs. If we get hacked, we got to go on the logs to figure out what's happening. AWS Cloudwatch, Amazon Lambda automatically monitors Lambda's functions on your behalf through Amazon Cloudwatch. It reports metrics such as numbers of requests, execution duration per request, and the number of requests resulting in an error. These metrics are exposed at the function level, which can leverage to set CloudWatch alarms for a list of metrics, right? So one thing you're going to look at in your AWS Lambda, just throwing a lot of errors, right? Your CloudWatch should say, okay, this function through 10 alarms in 5 minutes. You need to look at this function, right? Something's not going on right with this function, right? So, Princess A, no problem. I appreciate your support. Two is it helps me for you. Like I said, I've been trying to get my AWS skills up. So the best way to get it up is to teach it and start labbing, like my man said. So we're gonna start labbing, creating VPCs, creating serverless Lambda functions, inserting into serverless databases. Then back there, Cognito, how we're gonna log in and authenticate and do authorization of these users, right? So cloud trails, you can implement governance and compliance and risk an entire AWS cloud, including the Lambda. Cloud trails enable you to log, continuously monitor, and retain accounts activity related to your AWS infrastructure, right? So cloud trail is all the logs you putting in that this user or service is doing, or these permissions being taken on and off goes into your cloud trail. In Cloudwatch, you put alarms to go off reading your cloud trail, right? So there was 20 alarms in cloud trail. Cloudwatch send the developers and security team an email, right? See what's going on over there, right? A new product, I always like coming up to an AWS new product, right? AWS X-Rays can analyze and debug production and distributed Lambda-based application, which enables you to understand the performance of your application and underlying services. So you can eventually identify troubleshooting the root cause of the performance issues and errors. X-Ray's end-to-end view of the request that travels through your application shows the maps of application underlying components, so you can analyze the application during development and production, right? So Cloud Trails just say this Lambda function was called and inserted and it did something, right? AWS X-Rays takes you through, okay, this Lambda calls authenticated something. The authentication was this many milliseconds. That got called back into the database. The database did a SQL call, and that SQL call took 400 milliseconds, right? So it shows you a more input so you can trace some more through so you can really drill down and get the information you need, where the other one was just kind of like, this was called, this was called, this was called. X-Ray is going to delve, as you're seeing it, it's going to delve more down into the actual services and start giving you metrics inside the service itself. Right. So, which is a cool product. A lot of things I like about AWS is they work with big customers for so long. Customers have been asking for these features. So they build those features for those big customers. Then they give it to the little customers and charge them for it. Right. But shout out to them. It's pretty reasonable, right? AWS Config is another one. You can track configuration changes to Lambda, including deleted functions, runtime tag, code size, memory allocation, time setting, congruency settings, right? So sometimes you can have two events called the database. When the database makes an update, it's going to lock the record. So if the other Lambda function is trying to get to that record and it's locked, right? It's called deadlock. You can actually have two things trying to get the same thing in reverse order, and they can never release those resources in the database, right? So AWS Config will help you see that, right? And two is as you add functions, if you need to roll back because one of your configuration files broke something, right? It's going to give you those configuration settings to roll those back. We talking about FedRAMP, moderate, and authorization. So if you look here, I put it in red. Let me get Princess A's out the way, right? In red meanings, FedRAMP means the government approved that service and you can use it, right, for a federal client. Same here, right? AWS Cloud, FedRAMP region, you can use the AWS Serverless Application Repository, right, for a lot of your serverless stuff in there, right? Because a lot of times, like I said, I like to do big systems and work for big clients, so I need to make sure I do a lot of federal work, so I need to make sure if I do this, the federal government would accept it as approval. Here's another one: receive 14 services. I just really want to put stuff. There's that step function, direct connect. We just talked about config, right? So you can run that in government cloud. AWS government cloud, real quick, is just a data center only with government clients in there to make it more secure. And to get in there, you have to be invited by a large government client if you're a vendor, right? So let's talk about some of the quick security features, then we'll be wrapping it up. What are some of the security best practices? While developing secure serverless architectures may seem daunting, teams should be able to address security concerns. DevOps and security team members should consider the following best practices for AWS Lambda when building functions and designing serverless applications. Right? So, as a security analyst, that's my job to say, okay, are these things secure and how are we doing secure coding, right, to protect the client and protect us, really, right? Only utilize only one IAM role per Lambda function. Do not, I see this a lot. Do not store AWS credentials in Lambda functions or configuration, right? So if you log in a database or you logging into a service that your Lambda function needs, right? There's a security manager out there you should use. Here it goes, talking about store secrets in the ECT system managed parameter store or Lambda environment functions with encryption helpers. Set the API authorization configuration settings when using the API gateway, right? So we just want to make sure we're doing the right thing. And the other thing is part of it is we know what the right thing is, right? A lot of times some of these technologies are so new, we developers don't know the right thing, right? They just trying to get their code and functionality working. Right. Apply least privileges to your VPC related to the functions. Set access control standards and limit access to Lambda APIs. Monitor Lambda's availability and performance with Cloudwatch. And two is we got to use X-Ray with Cloudwatch. Ensure security settings for cloud resources collecting to the Lambda function. It says consider using Dash. Set the most restrictive permissions possible when setting API policies. Delete Lambda functions that are no longer used. So Lambda, what is Lambda doing to isolate itself, right? You're in a shared environment. How is it isolating itself, right? Feds now look favorably as Feds now look at you favorably as a contractor if you have cloud search to work on the facts. So yeah, so that's what and engineering kind of is correct. That's why I'm trying to get my cloud certs up. So I got a lot of on-prem stuff, but you need you need cloud certs so you can look favorably in the cloud. And the Fed and all the government agencies are trying to get to the cloud to save money. And two is they don't want to pay a ton of their SAs or DBA. They want Amazon to take that over for their clients, right? So from an isolation standpoint, Lambda uses a variety of open source and proprietary isolation techniques to protect workers and execution environments. Each execution environment contains a dedicated copy of the following items: the code of the particular function version, any Lambda layer selected to your function version, the chosen function runtime, for example, Java 11, Node.js 12, Python 3.8, or function or other function custom runtime, right? So they want to make sure they use their most secure version of that, right? And how they're using it, right? Writable temp directory or minimal Linux user space based on Amazon Linux 2. So I usually use their version of Amazon Linux 2. It's actually been approved by the government. So, and it's a knockoff of Red Hat, right? With some very cool features to excel in the cloud. So some other features there is let's see. I'm taking the next Azure 204. Oh yeah, I do a lot of Azure work. Once I get my AWS, I'm definitely gonna do some Azure stuff too. Engineering, because I think everybody's going to be multi-cloud in the future. Amazon's going down a little bit, Azure's going down, so I think people going to have things in both clouds. Right? Environmental isolation. We just set out CG groups used to constrain functions in CPU and memory. You want to make sure, because it's one big box, right, with multiple VMs. So how do you make sure their Lambda doesn't get over in somebody else's Lambda in memory, right? How do you break that up to make sure that doesn't happen? Namespace, each execution environment runs in a dedicated namespace. We do this by having unique group processor IDs, user IDs, network interface, and other resources managed by the Linux kernel, right? You got to remember, a lot of times it's one big box and it's got like 10 or 50 customers on it, right? You want to make sure you don't step on anything or dump the memory and you see some other customers' information, right? Set comp BFS to limit the system calls that can be used by within the execution environment, right? So hopefully my jobs don't affect the speed of somebody else's jobs, right? IP tables and routing prevent egress network communication to isolate network connection between VMs. Chroot provides a scope access to underlying file system. Firecracker configuration used to limit block devices and network throughput. Firecracker security features for more information. So that's kind of it I have for today. I just want to talk about, let me find that. Just talk about what does serverless architecture look like from a standpoint. And I know that's the future, right? People, that's one reason people go to the cloud, right? To let Amazon take over that mundane work, that some of that system work, that DBA work, right? You want to hand that over to Amazon because they're great at it, and you want to focus on what's good for your business, right? So, drop any questions in there, and we can answer them. Or if anybody want to come up, just I'll drop the link. Let me drop the link anyway. Like I said, so that was just kind of interesting to me. Like I said, I've been doing a lot of security reviews lately. So that serverless architecture, I've been doing 3 tier for forever. I've been doing 3 tier for about. I appreciate that Netropolis. I've been doing that forever. So it's interesting. So I just wanted to for me learn new things, see how it operates, see how it moves. So and I think that's what I'm gonna do some of the first labs on is let's do serverless. Let's just focus on the architecture and the DevOps piece. Um let's focus on VPC and controlling the serverless piece. But see if we can get serverless, and I'm calling that the new tier. What is the new tier, right? It's serverless. Let's like engineering cannabis. Let's let Amazon do what it's good at, and we're gonna do what we're good at. It. So let's see what that will look like from an architectural standpoint and from a security standpoint, right? We don't want to change on security, right? So I'm hoping everybody has a great weekend, and Monday's here already, and so we're gonna get at it. So like I said, if anybody doesn't have any questions, or professorblackops@gmail.com, you reach out to me. If I don't know, I can hook you up with somebody that knows, right? And once again, I'm gonna start interviewing people. I got some cool guests coming on. I got the CIO of a major state coming on, super cool. I got some AWS architects coming on. I got a guy was cool. He went from biology to IT. So we always talk about how to get in IT from other industries. So he's a cool guy. I appreciate that, Helmet. Y'all go see me around these YouTube streets. I'm on everybody's channel. Shout out to Black Heights. I really enjoyed that talk. And like I said, my young man I know is gonna be great. I'm gonna just chip in my little 2 pennies to help make sure he gets there. That was a cool interview, like I said, from him. Me and him chopped it up for about an hour. The young guy get gifted land. Lane, facts. So yeah, so we chopped it up an hour, about security. So that's what I do. Um, and I see a lot of people starting companies. They dealing with state agencies and federal agencies, and that's kind of my bailiwick. That's what I bring to this spot, this channel, to help people do that. So once again, I'm out. Everybody have a good weekend, and I'm like I said, I'm on everybody's channel. Go support them. You'll see me on these YouTube streets. Everybody stay safe out there, man. I'm trying to avoid that I'm a crime. Trying to get out there, I'm a crime. Once again, if you need me, ProfessorBlackOps@gmail.com. We can always drop a link and just chop it up in private too, man. I'm out.